Today we're going to take a look at the defensive line for the BYU Cougars for 2010 as the Cougars go through their spring football workouts and practices. BYU has to replace essentially three starters: Brett Denny, Russell Tialavea at nose tackle, Jan Jorgensen, Denny and Jorgensen the defensive ends of course, and Jan Jorgensen, one of the great all-time sack masters in BYU football history. All three of those players are going to need to be replaced this year, so it's a tall task. There are some big shoes to fill. So we're going to talk about starting at the defensive end situation in replacing Jan Jorgensen. That's going to fall to Vic Soto. Vic is 6'3", 265 pounds. Many of you will remember he came in 2005. Very highly recruited tight end. Played tight end at BYU, had some injury problems, a couple of season-ending injuries in 2006 and then in 2008. In 2008, he had actually made the switch to linebacker from tight end over to the defensive side of the ball, and then was injured after starting the first two games for BYU. Then last year made the switch to defensive end and was a contributor there. He is an explosive athlete, to say the least, and when you see him out on the field, he really does stand out. The question about Vic is how consistent he's going to be able to play, and you know, he's switched positions 3 times now within this program. He is, as I mentioned, just a tremendous athlete, and overall, on the defensive line, you're going to see an increase in athleticism this year, just raw athleticism. Perhaps not may not show on the field in terms of productivity because you're replacing some veteran players on that defensive front. But there is an upgrade in athleticism. Now, if you move over to the other side, one of those upgrades in athleticism in my mind is Matt Putnam, and he looks to be the starting on the opposite side of the line, out of their bookend for BYU. Matt is 6'6", 255 pounder, played at Box Elder High School, and I really like his length, his athleticism. He did play in all 13 games last year, but his productivity was down last year versus the previous season when he came in as a freshman right off his mission. You might remember that 2008 game at UCLA. He had the tip pass and interception. He's a guy that has a lot of length. Now, the question that I have about Matt is whether or not he's going to be an every down type of player. In my opinion, he's a tremendous pass rusher. He is very long reach, and he's difficult to throw over, and he's got some good quickness. But the question is how will he play in the run game? And if he's not an every down player, then that could cause some problems for BYU. Now, if you look at the guys who are backing up at the defensive end spot right now in spring ball, one of the guys that stands out to me is a guy by the name of Thomas Bryson, played at Layton High School here in Utah. He was a guy who came in, he led his senior year, he had 23 sacks, led the state of Utah in sacks. He was kind of a late bloomer in some ways, but when you see him out on the field, he really does stand out as a guy that's very athletic. About 6'5", 245 pounder, 250 pounds right now. Another guy to look at in terms of depth, Remington Pack, coming in from Bingham High School, part of that pipeline that BYU has created and what has really become the top, one of the top high school programs in the state of Utah. Again, Peck about 250, 6'4". Another guy in the mix could be Jordan Richardson. He's seen a little bit of action. He's coming from Bonneville High School up in Idaho Falls, Idaho. Has seen some action. Guy that's about 6'3", 275, and maybe a guy that, if Matt Putnam doesn't play particularly well in the run game, Jordan Richardson may be a guy that they could look to in running down situations. Another guy in the mix is Jaden Wagner. He's the brother of Aaron Wagner, who is the linebacker here at BYU. Jaden goes 6'4", 264. He's another guy that kind of came in as a linebacker type prospect and has been moved to the defensive line. He's kind of a raw prospect and has been developing in the program. He's really most well known for his MMA background, or his Ultimate Fighting background, prior to coming to BYU. Now, if you look at the defensive tackle situation, a guy who will step in there and be the starter, and is the starter right now, Romney Funga, 6'1", 285-pounder, 290-pounder. You may remember him from last year. Actually, he started 7 games, and Russell Tialavea only started 6 of the 13 games that BYU played. So Romney is a guy who I think will be very, very solid. He was a significant contributor as a freshman before his mission, and he's a terrific player. And then the Cougars will get back Ethan Manumaleuna, who is coming back from his mission in time for fall practice. The real question is what kind of shape will he come home in, and will he be near his playing weight? What's that situation going to be? The one good thing is that nose tackle is a position that a guy can come back from his mission and be a significant contributor. Of course, Ethan famous for blocking the kick that won the game for BYU against UCLA in the Las Vegas Bowl a couple, 3 years ago. Now, behind those 2 players are 3 freshmen, and depending on how Ethan comes back, those freshmen could end up being pressed into some significant playing roles. Probably, well, we'll just talk about them. Tuni Kanush, 6'1", 285-pounder, another guy out of Bingham High School. He's a guy that a lot of people think was one of the very best defensive tackle prospects in the West. Travis Tuiloma is a guy who is an under-the-radar, played at a smaller school out in Kansas, and a lot of people think he has some real potential. Another guy around 285 to 290. And then Jordan Affo, who's out of Cottonwood High School, broke his back and had a lot of attention prior to breaking his back. But the Cougars are one of the few teams who stuck with him, and he's a 300-pounder, and another guy that may be in the mix. I think out of those 3 freshmen, that Tuni Kanush is probably the most likely guy to see any action. A guy who's very talented and very highly regarded. So that's your look at nose tackle. And again, there's some tremendous talent there. Outside of Funga, not a ton of experience, and that's going to be obviously very key. My concern about BYU this year, I think they'll be fine against the pass in that defensive front. My question is how will they play against the run? And how the BYU defensive line goes this year is going to determine an awful lot in regards to the success of this team, because remember, on offense, the Cougars are going to have a brand new quarterback. And playing Washington and Florida State, you would like to be able to rely on your defense as your season gets started, and allowing your offense to catch up a little bit. Not sure that the Cougars are going to be able to have that luxury, however, with all the inexperience on that defensive front 7. We're going to be talking in future reports coming up here this week in regards to the linebacking situation, because there's a lot of youth being served there as well.